Welcome to the conclusion of week 2. In week 2, we discussed real numbers and the properties associated with them. Some of the properties that we talked about were the commutative properties of addition and multiplication, which simply said that if it doesn't matter which number I start with, the answer or the sum to an addition problem is going to stay the same. And the same thing applies with multiplication. Then we talked about the associative properties of addition and multiplication, which says that I can group if I'm adding a bunch of numbers together, I can group them however I want, and I get the same answer. And the same thing applies with multiplication. Then we talked about the identity properties. With addition, the identity is 0, which means if I add 0 to a number, I get that number. With multiplication, the identity is 1, meaning if I multiply a number by 1, I get that number. We talked about the 0 property of multiplication, which says that if I multiply a number by 0, I get 0. And lastly, we talked about the multiplication property of -1, which says that if I multiply by -1, I get the opposite of that number. Then we moved into adding and subtracting, multiplying and dividing real numbers. Adding real numbers, one of the things I want you to remember, adding a negative is the same as subtraction. So 8 plus -1, that plus negative is the same as subtraction. And I want you to start seeing it that way. Subtracting real numbers, probably one of the more tricky ones, is a double negative. 10 minus -1 is essentially addition. Two negative signs back to back, where a double negative makes a positive. With multiplying and dividing, if both numbers are negative, the answer is positive. And if one number is positive and one number is negative, the answer is negative. You'll now be getting ready to take your assessment for week 2. Look back at all your notes, your homework assignments as you get ready for that. Reminder that I will be available on Friday to help you with any questions you might have.